Well, it's Muscle Phil back, and I guess for about a week or so I was involved in a very difficult group project, but the insights I have gained are extremely valuable, and I'm feeling charged and energetic in terms of the importance of social interaction and actually making a project work. And I also figured a way to get out of some of the work, and that's even better. So I'm cheerful. All right. Well, one of the things I said in the Civil War video, which we just finished earlier, and by the way, we're in the process of turning this into a cute little bookstore on one end of my office and a production center on the other. And I may have lined up some volunteer organizations that will haul off some of the books that really don't fit. And we have some new books coming in. So there's a lot shaken. And in any case, I had said that at the end of the Civil War video, that I was going to return to a Civil War story that I started 30 years ago when I used to take a shortcut through Resurrection Cemetery on the west side of Madison. And there were Confederate Civil War gravestones in that cemetery. And that was because there was a Confederate prisoner of war camp in Madison, Wisconsin. And lots, something like 20% of those Confederate Civil War prisoners of war just died because of the poor nutrition and stuff. And that inspired me to write a story, which I've now, 30 years later, I found it because I was able to access what Serena found on one of my hard drives. And I'm back at the story. It's in kind of a rough state now, but it's surprising how the technology has changed in that amount of time. So, some of this will be fictional, and some of the names I've changed because there's things that you don't joke about as far as presidents. So this is called the Confederate Cemetery in Madison, Wisconsin, and I will proceed with saying President Mike Pence's face flashed across Paul Rothstein's tablet, overriding every single one of his apps and video games. The tablet was sitting on top of a red plastic milk crate in the History Department office in Bascom Hill, the flagship of the building of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which was founded in 1848. Construction in Bascom Hall started a year later, as if anybody was going to give a shit, because the world was going to end in 12 minutes. Because the planet was about to turn into fiery cinders and stuff, lost codes of every launch-ready and targeted nuclear weapon of Russia, the United States, India, Israel, Pakistan, India, France, and North Korea were hacked. And the birds of prey were in the air, and everyone knew it. But anyway, it was built in Gothic romantic style and was famous for two things: the 1909 statue of Abraham Lincoln seated in front of overlooking the beautiful slope of Bascom Hill, and the famous plaque which states, "In all lines of academic investigation, it is of the utmost importance that the investigator should absolutely be free to follow the indications of truth wherever they may lead, whatever may be the limitation of inquiry with a travel inquiry elsewhere. We believe in the great state of Wisconsin should ever encourage the continual and fearless shifting and winding by which only the truth can may be found." And that was 1894 trial committee final report via Hertford, sifting and winnowing. The entire graduate student knew they would be dead instantly as soon as the North Korean missiles hit in less than 15 seconds. History repeats itself in progressively more lethal and technologically driven cycles. And if anyone was still around after the nuclear war that was about to happen, they knew that the next war afterwards would be fought with broken beer bottles for radioactive canned goods and burned out roofless Walmarts. Paul Rothstein's New York accent rang out to the other graduate students as if he was thinking out loud. Well, they thought that Pence would be President Trump's insurance policy. But when the story broke about Trump and Putin, not even Dopey Dog as vice president could have kept Donald from being impeached. The 12 graduate students from American history, 1944 to 45 to the present, stood close to listen to tiny speakers of the tablet. It was exactly 78 years since the last nuclear weapon were used in anger on the planet Earth, and now it was the death merchant's turn for making up for lost time. My fellow Americans, August 6, 2018 will replace November 2nd, 1943 as a new day that will live in infamy. Pence was even stupider than Donald. At least Donald would get the date right, December 7th, 1945, for the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Now this is 30 years ago, and I haven't touched the screen since then. The screen went blank, and a dozen graduate students stared at each other. Finally, O'Leary said, "Looks like we all have 2 minutes to bend over, stick our heads between our legs, and kiss our asses goodbye. Madison is a secondary target, so the missile will not be here for the next couple of minutes." Just like it was happening, as if history was a tale made and told by idiots. Some held each other's hands, some blessed themselves, one cried, but Paul Rothstein decided he would go out and face the end of the world. He thought it would be the last defiant act in its defiant life. He was born in the same year as the Cuban Missile Crisis. Maybe that was why he decided to do his graduate work in American history. It seemed the same big questions were hanging over his head for his whole life. His parents were only teenagers themselves, born as they were at the end of the Second World War. My fans have informed me that I should use some new camera techniques. And I want to say that I have not touched that story for 30 years. And the part about the end of the world, I need to fix some dates in it and such. But it's amazing to me that for this whole time, we've been living in this wonderland where we're not aware of the capability that we have to totally destroy the planet. And we've just assumed it would never happen, just like the people before World War I would think that the planet, the dance would go on forever and ever and ever. I mean, when I was a young man, I was a nuclear weapon. I studied to be a nuclear weapons analyst, and that's the kind of thing where you play games with people's lives. And if you say, and if one side loses 40 million, and one side loses 30 million, then the ones that lost 30 million are the winner. And then, about the time I started writing the story, I became some friends with some people in what they call Physicians for Nuclear Responsibility. And they actually figured out the impact of any catastrophic event on the existing healthcare facilities. And even something, a plane crash, or something like that, could overwhelm everything for a city. And so at this time, I guess I'm back to the story, because I hear about the saber rattling about North Korea, and I think, well, even the lowest yield Korean nuclear weapon, and the North Korean nuclear weapon, and they probably have hydrogen bombs, would be by a factor of 10 stronger than Hiroshima. So I have kind of a narrative trajectory that the story is going to follow, and we're going to be doing more chapters of it, because it just, between my Civil War experience of the myth and the reality, I can say that the worst landscape of any Civil War battlefield would be nothing to what it would look like, what the landscape would look like. And on my blog I have a paper that talks about Lord Byron's use of the metaphor of a winter that would be like a nuclear winter for his poem poem Darkness. You can find it on my blog, The Fiction of Phil Kaveny. And I guess I intend to pull this all together in kind of a literary product, which I'm doing on a short notice right now, but that's the way I roll.